Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sexy Business Podcast. I'm Lewd Neko, and my lovely co host is Spooky Dangerous.
Hello.
And today, our topic is furries. Well, specifically, furry loot games. But if you don't even know what a furry is, one, I would love to examine your brain and know how you've gone through the internet this long without encountering a furry. But broadly speaking, furries are just all the people who are into those anthropomorphic talking animals. So if you really thought Robin Hood was hot when you watched that Disney movie, you might be a furry. Or Kovu from Lion King 2. That was another furry awakening for a lot of women I know. Or for our more feminine attracted folks, maybe it was Lola Bunny. That's a really common one. Or maybe even Judy Hopps from Zootopia, or the Shakira persona. There's a lot of different kinds of furries, lots of different ways to be a furry, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of our experiences with the furry fandom, and then we're going to talk more specifically about all of the lewd furry games that are out there. So
Hell
I guess
yeah.
I'll throw it over to you first, actually, because I
Okay.
feel like I have a lot to talk about when it comes to my experiences with the furry fandom.
Absolutely. Because you wear
What
it
is your furry?
24/7. I've only got my ears
Yeah,
on for this one episode. It's a very special, spooky cat ears
yeah, got to get in the spirit.
episode. But yeah, I thought it would be kind of interesting to start off with our first encounter into discovering this kind of content, especially like specifically art and animated kind of things, because I wonder if someone's first introduction to furries is to meeting somebody in a fursuit and going, that's a very specific thing, as opposed to like actually seeing like art content of characters probably would be very different. I think my first experience with uh, adult furry content was an old Newgrounds game called Hightail Hall, which is a deep and forbidden memory, surely. Um, but like in opening it, you're kind of like, okay, I know this is an adult game. I know that the characters, kind of look like this because you get the preview thumbnail or whatever. And when you're a horny teenager, you're just like, fuck it, we're gonna try anything. But like the cast was like also really weird. There was like a giraffe that was a stripper. There was the big muscly zebra type, and a femboy maid fox. Um,
Classic.
and you can give an emu a hand job. As an Australian, I don't know how to feel about this. Um, and then from there, like, there's been so much more newer, higher quality content and stuff that comes out, especially in comics. My medium of choice is usually comics, and that's how I encounter a lot of the artists that I like. And in the sites that I read comics from, they don't often separate furry content and non-furry content. And it's just always like, oh, this looks like it has high quality art. I'm going to look at it. And it's gotten to the point where whether or not something is anthro or human or not, it's just really irrelevant to me. It's just like, is this character design hot? Okay, I'm interested. Which I feel like is really neutral, but I'm also just like, yeah, whatever. I'm furry. That's great. Sounds good. Uh, but what about you? What was your furry awakening? When
I
did
guess
you put on the ears?
I mean, like technically, I think Pokemon might have been like the gateway for me because I was a Pokemon kid. I was like obsessed with it, and like I mentioned in a different episode that like Lucario was one of my earliest like fictional crushes because I thought he was cool. And this is when they were releasing a lot of like the anthro, morphic sort of more Pokemon were coming out. I also definitely remember like Googling Gardevoir as a kid, and this was like back before Google had Safe Search. um,
Oof. Yep, definitely saw something you weren't expecting.
Yeah, I was like, wait, what is that? What's going on? Because I remember reading some like Pokemon fanfics with her, and I didn't really understand the sex that was happening, but I knew it was like adult. um,
Yeah, Gardevoir with the massive milkers for no reason.
yeah, I mean, I like her when she's petite. She's supposed to be live. That's the appeal.
Yeah, it's the sundress
Yeah.
vibe with the big flowy kind of. Yeah. Anyway, please continue.
Um, And then I guess it continued because I was about like 12 when like My Little Pony Generation 4, like the whole brony thing started. So I was old enough to know like where the good stuff was on the internet, and I also had unrestricted internet access. So I remember just seeing all of the porn that was made, and I wasn't like a My Little Pony like waifuist. Like I wasn't like, oh, Pinkie Pie's my waifu and I love her so much. I just it was really like it was kind of like what you were saying, where like the art was good, and that was kind of what drew me, is that there
Hmm.
was just a lot of really nicely done art
Well, even in
and
the original
animation.
content, right? Like the voice acting and stuff is such a high quality. And I feel like
Yeah.
if the voice actress for Rainbow Dash was mid, bronies wouldn't exist. That's my hot
Oh
take.
gosh. Yeah, and I mean, there's like if you look at a lot of like My Little Pony like SFM animations, they usually get like voice actresses to imitate the voices, and that really sells it for a lot of people. So that was kind of like the next step towards furrydom, and then Zootopia was like the point of no return when I officially had to accept that like I owned a foxtail and I wore it when I saw the movie. And I howled in the theater with my friends to embarrass them. And then I was like, wait, I think I'm actually just a furry.
That actually
And
reminds me, I should let me tell a quick story about my
yeah.
first introduction to My Little Pony. I
Oh
went
god.
to a anime convention in Australia, and they had a cinema room, which was just like rows of chairs, and they had like a
Yeah.
big projector up, and they had a schedule for what was going to be playing. And I went with my partner at the time because we went to watch previews for upcoming anime, which included stuff like Black Butler at the time. Dating
Ooh.
myself, carbon dating. Um, and then after that preview had finished, the first episode of the My Little Pony show came on. And what we didn't realize was as the preview for the anime was ending, the room slowly had filled up with lots of people. And when the next thing started, every single person sung along with the theme song
Yes.
word for word flawlessly. And I'm sitting there going, I've entered the hell dimension. What has happened while I wasn't paying attention? And then we watched the first episode, and I'm like, this actually isn't bad. Why does everyone think this is so weird? Like, the actual
Mhm.
characters and writing is good.
Yeah, it was just it was such a cultural phenomenon that like just I don't think there will never be something quite like that. Like it was just such a time to be involved with that fandom and to see how big it got and how many conventions were specifically brony conventions, which like not many fandoms have, like, fandom specific conventions aside from like the really big sci-fi ones, and things like that. So it was an interesting time to be a furry. And I mean, nowadays I'm like full furry. I have a fursona. I actually have a partial fursuit. Um, I've gone to some furry conventions, and I really enjoy mostly. I would say the things I enjoy about the community is the social aspect. The conventions are very much like party conventions. So it's a little bit of a different vibe than like an anime convention where you're like most people are there for like, oh, they want to meet their favorite voice actress, they want to buy merch, they want to see cosplays. And then with like furry conventions, it's like you're either there to wear a fursuit, to watch people wear fursuits, or to like get absolutely shit faced in a hotel room,
To hook up
or
with
all three.
someone who is like a mystery date because they take off the fursuit and it's a completely different person from what you expected.
I mean, that's how I met one of my ex partners. No shit. Like, he
Mm,
approached me in fursuit and asked me to dance. I was like, I couldn't even tell what gender, because I was like, okay,
mm,
it's a masculine furry, but like, I don't know. It could be any person underneath. I was just willing to go with the flow.
hell yeah.
And I mean, that's also something I enjoy about the furry fandom is they've always been very kink positive.
Mm,
Back in the early like not early 90s, but I think late 90s was when one of the first furry conventions was. And obviously back then, conventions were very much like adult only spaces because children didn't have access to like the kinds of like forum posts that were happening back then, much less the money and ability to go to conventions, whereas nowadays conventions are like more family friendly. So a lot of like the original like furry fandom was based a lot around like sexuality, and there was like a lot of kink and various fetishes were popping up. And there's also a lot of fetishes that are just directly associated with furry characters, like transformation,
yeah,
obviously all of the
absolutely.
different appendages a furry can have,
Yeah, I
or
see a lot
just
of like Lamia and snake
yeah.
constriction type stuff.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of like vor content is very
Vor
popular
is
because of
definitely very furry with
yeah,
that
because the
predator
predator
prey
prey
type
dynamic.
thing. Yeah, same brain.
Yeah,
Swear to God.
especially after Zootopia. Zootopia had the pred
Absolutely.
prey. in the text. I know there was like a lot of interesting fan fictions inspired after that. Like I remember reading a webcomic that was like basically like what if in the Zootopia universe there was like pred prey BDSM clubs.
Yeah, I believe it. I'm convinced.
But yeah, lots of furry stuff. So I guess we should talk more specifically about furries in the sort of broader gaming sphere.
Yeah, because we have a lot of the economy is probably the wrong word, but a lot of the economy in independent game design is, and especially in our niche in adult content, there's no AAA. AAA doesn't exist. Everyone is an
Yeah.
indie creator, and everyone is teams of smaller than five for the most part. And when you are creating something, you're often backer funded or like Patreon funded or like something that you're relying on Steam to happen.
Yeah.
And because of these platforms, you can very clearly see how successful a product is. Like if you have a look at a Patreon, like you've linked me one in the pre-show discussion that has many zeros on the end of it. And you can really see just how strong the support is and how successful these creators and stuff are. And like we said in a previous episode, furry is one in particular. Is people are not shy to throw money at this interest.
Oh my gosh, no, it's insane. Like, there's literally, I think, like a significant portion of capitalism that relies on furries.
You've heard of the pink dollar now. It's time to hear about the fur dollar.
Because like I've been to some of these conventions, and like I know the Patreon I linked was Anthro Heat. They actually have had booths like at furry conventions where people can put on the VR headset and experience the game.
Damn, that's some next
So
level stuff.
yeah, because I know some furry conventions will have specific like adult vendor alleys, which is
Mm,
something I really appreciate about those spaces because it covers the issue of what do we do about people trying to sell adult content, but there could also be minors in the room.
mm.
And then it also it gives a specific place where people can go into that room and they don't have to feel like really embarrassed or shy about like looking up the Dakibakura covers and making sure nobody can see over their shoulder.
That is kind of funny. I have also considered doing something similar. We have a convention formerly known as Sexpo. I think it is now Love Expo. Um,
Aww.
Cringe, right? Um, that I've like considered going to and having a setup and like showing off, getting a big cardboard cutouts of the characters and that kind of
Oh
stuff.
my gosh.
Um, and so I really do wonder what the actual conversion rate is on investment for something like that. But that's maybe something we can cover in a further topic. But I think Anthro Heat is actually a very good example of a team that's done it well. Like the Patreon looks
Oh
like it's
yeah.
doing really, really well. The game content features a lot of unique characters and it's got a unique gimmick is not the right word, but I don't think we see that much kind of content in VR.
Yeah. Really, it's like I think a lot of it is like in VR chat itself. Like VR chat has a furry economy that is pretty thriving from what I know about because the thing about furries is you're in a, fandom where almost everybody has a unique character.
Yeah,
Which is a bit different from like the anime fandoms where like some people have original characters, but not everybody. Like if
everyone
you're a
just is their
furry,
waifu.
yeah, if you're a furry, there's like almost a 95% chance you have a fursona, if not multiple. And so you want to get art of your fursona, and maybe you want to get sexy art of your fursona. If you're in VR, a lot of people want custom avatars based off of their characters, sometimes NSFW avatars, so they can get freaky with all their furry friends. And then with Anthroheat in specific, I know one thing I think they've done really successfully, based on just sort of stalking their Twitter, is really consistent update schedules. Like I've been sort of just watching them update stuff, and they're always adding new features, new characters. They have a little bit of merch here and there. I think they have like some body pillows and things like that. So they're doing a lot to really make sure they keep that steady fan base from Patreon and Twitter and all across the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you've got to try and keep those people connected, keep those people interested in the content, and keep them happy with what's being released.
Yeah, and then some of the other games were sort of thinking about is Amorous is a really big one because it was available for free, so a lot of people have played it just There's like a lot of reviews on Steam that are just like, my friend forced me to play this. It's like wink, wink, you know.
Yeah, I think Amorous is a great one. This is one that I discovered. I don't think that I found this on Newgrounds. I think I found this somewhere else, but it wasn't on Steam at the time. It came to Steam like recently,
Yeah.
compared to its development cycle. But they had stopped working on it. It had been a dead project for a long time, and then they had put it onto Steam, which I also think is very interesting. But apparently, in the port to Steam, they had done like a single patch with just like some regular changes and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah, there was like one major crash. It was something to do with like the options menu, and I remember it because when I was like getting ready to stream it, it was like one of the first games I streamed when I started out. Is I remember it crashing while I was like trying to play it and being like, "Wait, what the fuck?" And I looked it
that's
up, and it was
funny.
like, "Oh, this is a game-breaking bug. Just don't click this one specific button."
Yeah, so I think that is kind of cool, but I also think that Amorous is a very I feel like iconic is maybe not correct, but perhaps
Influential.
yeah, perhaps influential, perhaps impactful. In my playing of it, I found that it was really interesting. It does have the initial problem of you don't know who's interactable when you're in the place trying to find people. You just kind of click on everyone, and then you talk to people, and they're like, "No, I do not want to fuck you," and you're like, "Damn it, I picked the wrong person." El Riz kind of a deal. And then you know kind of wander around and talk to different people. One of the things that I thought was really cool was that they had a canonly trans character that
Yeah.
wasn't like Fudo, wasn't like magically enhanced, wasn't like weird and strange, or like, oh no, this is just like a a parallel to a regular person that just happens to be in this furry universe where everyone is additionally anthropomorphic, and made it feel like they were a real person, and the writing
Yeah.
was really good and stuff like that, which I thought was really cool because I don't feel like a lot of games broach that very well. Um, and in the furry space, I feel like a lot more LGBT stuff is way more acceptable because
Oh yeah.
in those spaces, not just like specifically furry, but like a lot of kink spaces as well, everyone kind of has this vibe of, yeah, look, we're all super weird. So a lot of this kind of stuff just really isn't actually that strange and is actually totally fine.
Yeah, because like I think because the furry fandom will always be weird. Like anime has kind of become normalized to an extent where like
Mm,
I know relatively normal people who have seen like Demon Slayer or something like that, you know.
mm.
Um but like furry is always I think going to be a little bit weird. Like, you know, it's always going to be that thing that people kind of like go haha, this is like for weirdos, or like kids are always going to get picked on for it and stuff like that. But as a result, there's like no need to pretend basically in the fandom. So people have always been very open about being gay,
Yeah.
being trans, being neurodivergent, or just you know being whatever it is that makes you sort of stick out a little bit. And you know, I thought that was true in Amorous too, because I also really enjoyed that character's storyline. But there was also even just I remember one of the other characters, I think her name was Sky.
The
And I
cosplayer?
remember, yeah, the
Yeah.
cosplayer. And her
Me, who's
storyline, from
played
what I
this game
remember,
exactly one time, apparently knows exactly who you're talking about.
yeah, apparently she was very impactful. But I remember her whole thing was like being sort of ashamed of her body and like who she was
Mm.
underneath the cosplay. And you know, I appreciated that they actually wrote this character very well and that they gave her this backstory. And then you get to fuck her. And I think what Amorous did was, and you know, anime eroge have been doing this for decades, but I think in Western spaces, um, back in the 2010s, you know, porn games were for porn, and that was kind of it.
Yeah, it
You
didn't
you
have
weren't
any kind
looking
of
for a
story.
story.
You're looking at like Vadim God's Meet and Fuck series where you show up
Yeah,
and you're the mechanic and oh I fixed the tire. Best you get to it, I suppose. And that's kind of it, right?
yeah, but Amorous came along, and you know, I think for all of the characters, they all have something to them that you want to explore, that you want to get to know more about. Another thing I liked is that the game is like bisexual by nature, so like there
Mm.
are female and male and you know trans characters, and so no matter who you are or what your sexuality is, there's something for you to enjoy in that game, or maybe you'll get to explore something you never thought you would have enjoyed before.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of these categories of game, you look at it and you go, "Oh, maybe this character is for me," and then in the way that it's everything is kind of displayed to you is you have like an amount of exploring to do where you might go, oh, actually this was really hot or whatever. Like you might not have known Mercy is the name of the trans character. Like you might not have known that from looking at her when she shows up in the disco or the club or whatever it is that they're at. I don't know what they
furry
call
sex
it.
club.
Yeah, like when you initially see her, you obviously won't know this, right? And then you might go and talk to her and go, "Wow, she is the coolest one of all of them here." And then you find out this next thing, and you go, "Okay, actually, I am okay with that because I think that this is a cool person." You know what I mean? And then you see how it escalates and stuff like that. And I feel like that might be the same for a lot of other things. Like you might have other games that aren't furry centric but have a furry character, and you go, "Oh, actually, this character is really cool," and then like you're way more interested in them, and then you go, "Okay, wait, no, actually, I'm having an awakening."
Yeah, we were talking about like all of the millions of like monster girls and how like some of them can end up crossing into that furry territory, especially if it's like a werewolf or something. They're usually going to be just like an anthro wolf girl.
For
Or like
sure.
even nowadays, we have stuff like Beastars showing up, so we're seeing more of the
Yeah.
furry stuff crossing over into the anime sphere. So it's
Yeah,
always been
Beastars
there, but
and BNA, which
yeah,
was
brand new animal.
Brand New Animal. That show was really good too. And it felt like, oh no, I'm totally actually a human this whole time, but all my friends are animal people and also kind of sexy. Which is like definitely a furry pipeline, like a notch on there somewhere.
Oh yeah, there's just so many furry characters nowadays. I think it's partially just because there's so much you can do character design wise with a furry, a monster girl, things like that. And especially in the porn game universe, character design is like very important because
Yeah.
it's a very visual medium. You want to make characters that are appealing and sexy, and throwing in a furry girl into your game might draw an audience of people who are just there for that girl, or it might introduce an audience of people who they were into all the human characters, but now they're curious about, okay, what's this wolf girl got going on.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I see a lot of content creators like cosplayers and stuff like that, where you will see them have like a particular niche, I pick these kind of characters because they're my body type, or someone sees a character, thinks of me, and then goes, "You should do this," and they go, "Oh, I see how I can work with that character," and they do that thing. But then also you'll see ones that just try and hit lots of different niches, and when you go, "Oh, actually, I made content that appeals to this particular audience." And furries is a great example because it's like really well contained and obvious what appeals to them, right? And you go, "Oh, this went really well. Do I want to continue doing more things, or am I able to bridge some kind of gap between my regular audience and them? Do I want to try and compete with this niche and become a content creator just in this space and stuff like that?" And I feel like a lot of games can do well in both. Like Unicorn Overlord, which I probably will continue to talk about for a long time because it's a great game, presents as really non-furry for the first 40 hours of gameplay. And then you go to the furry country and meet just animal people. And then you're like, hang on a minute. If I wasn't horny about any characters before now, perhaps I have found somebody. And
That's how
there's
they get you.
options, right? Yeah, exactly.
I feel like another advantage for I know a lot of the furry games are typically visual novels. I know there's a pretty thriving like furry visual novel scene in general, like safe for work and is not safe for work. And I know there's also really big specific like gay visual novel, like male gay visual novel
Oh
scene.
yeah, the big bear category.
Yeah,
I see a lot. I
a
see a
lot of
lot
really
of content of
really
two
ripped
large
cats.
men. Yeah.
There's even like it wasn't Japanese. I think the game was originally Chinese. Neko that I played a little bit of, which is a like gay. And not all of them are the baras, like the big guys. There's basically like a big buff guy, a twink, and then like one that's kind of in between. so you can choose which one you want. And I haven't played a lot of those ones in particular. I've heard that scene is like pretty like thriving. Like there's like a pretty
Hmm.
dedicated like small community of people who are really like supporting of it. Which like as we've talked about a lot, you know, when it comes to NSFW games, that's usually what happens. It's just like they're small but very dedicated communities because they know that if they don't support that content, it's just not going to happen. So you have to actually go to their Patreon or support their game or, you know, share their content. Otherwise, it's just going to disappear.
Get that furry dollar.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Like, you know, furries do have very deep pockets for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But I think that's right. I think we should obviously always be thinking about community building and thinking about how a lot of these niches do interact with the kind of products and stuff that are being made. Because if you're making a product that can't connect with the community, you're not going to be able to have any kind of financial success from it, right? And if you are able to find a product that like really is high quality or really caters well to a specific community or a specific niche interest, when making adult content and appealing to niches is really easy because you're like, okay, this is the one type of content that I make. In doing a lot of other categories and stuff, you're like, oh, I play video games. It's like, okay, what is the one video game that you play on stream? Which is a lot harder to do, right? Because that's not necessarily infinite content. But when you're creating
Yeah.
something and you go, okay, this is for furries, and you go, okay, all my character designs need to be like this. I need to be in the furry space and showing it off, like, you know, amongst these other creators and stuff like that. And that's kind of what THM went through. It's like, okay, we are making not only food content, but also making chastity and femdom content. And it's like,
Mm.
okay, we need to find out what the user is kind of interacting with in these kind of spaces. How are we able to connect to them? How is the content we are making going to fit alongside the other stuff that they're watching? Because there's like a lot of hypno, there's a lot of like
Yeah.
encouragement captions, there's a lot of like user directed content in this niche. So it's like, if we're writing something that is user directed, is that going to work in the same way? Like, is it instructional? Is it, you know, that that kind of niche? And maybe I think about game design too much.
I mean, it's kind of part of your job, so I guess
A
it's
little bit.
important to think about game design a lot. And I mean, and I think another advantage for furries is like we mentioned, because that fandom has always been so kink centric, is that there's really dedicated furry kink communities based on
Mm.
everything. Like there's huge like a lot of furry hypno stuff. There's furry vor, like all sorts of furry BDSM, predator prey. There's like the baby fur stuff. There's the fat furs and expansion and inflation. Like all of these sort of like a lot of body based kinks are really common because it's kind of like, well, the furry's already a fantasy character that can't exist IRL, so you might as well just go crazy with it.
Yeah, because I feel like a
And
lot of people that have made that first step and realize that they're interested into furry content probably are also more likely to explore further and be more open to trying and being interested in other things. Because I'll be honest, the only inflation content I've ever seen has only ever been furry characters.
yeah, I mean, there was also some really like well done 3D like furry porn back in the day, like back when like it was pretty hard to be good at that kind of stuff. Where like nowadays, you know, a lot of people can pick up on like stuff like SFM and whatnot.
Mm.
But like in the like early, you know, late 2000s, early 2010s, I remember like there was a lot of tentacle furry stuff. There was furry inflation stuff. There was, you know, the horse cocks and the femboy foxes and the cum all over the walls. Like they were getting pretty crazy trying to figure out how to make like these characters and physics engines that could make those fantasies that people have always been like, you know, daydreaming about since the 90s, and people were just sketching little furry girls and being like, ooh, this character seems fun.
Yeah, exactly. I've just opened up my folder because I want to see if I've got any stuff saved in here. Because
Any
surely there's
furry
like a
game.
bunch. Like My Pig Princess is actually probably one of my
Okay.
favorites at the moment. Sign Capsule is
Yeah.
insanely talented.
They did
Um,
a crossover with, was it Bad Dragon or was it another sex toy company?
I'm not sure, honestly.
Because I remember seeing they did a collaboration where you could buy the pig pussy, and I think it came with like a little
Amazing.
character art of her.
Amazing. What more could you want?
uh, And then one I've played is Furlough Games is a game dev company, and they make like these furry sort of match threes. They have a straight one or a bisexual, I suppose. There's a little bit of like girl on girl with a guy in the middle kind of content. Sex in the Furry Titty, and then their all male gay version is Furry Shades of Gay, and both of those are trilogies now, so they've been evidently been pretty successful with them.
Hell yeah. I mean, that's another thing that the games that I make are live service games. It will just continue to grow for a long time until it's considered a complete story. Being able to have something and complete it and do a trilogy is like a big accomplishment, I think.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, I know there's like a bunch of other furry games. Oh, there was actually one that came out on Steam recently. I don't know what the name was. I totally forget. I saw it on like the top selling, and it's like a furry like cockvore game. Where, like you
Oh
run
yeah, I've seen a lot
around.
of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like it was sort of like, like PvP, like cockvore these people and then you could cum them out. Like really silly kind of stuff. But like the gameplay did look kind of like fun in a goofy way. uh
Now, what a fantastic visual to leave our audience with for the end of the episode. We've hit our 30 minutes, and you're not going to be watching anymore because you're going to be instantly Googling what this what this game is
it's on Steam somewhere.
somewhere. You'll find it if you scroll far enough. But once again, this is the Sexy Business Podcast. This is just but a snapshot of all the things furry that we could be talking about, and we will talk about more in the future. But we wanted this to be a space where we can talk about these kind of niches and how they interact with lewd tubing, how they interact with game design, how they interact with being a customer that interacts and buys these games, so that we can have a really honest and open conversation about this kind of stuff. So it doesn't feel weird and strange when you're talking about it with your friends. And you have a space to listen about it with people that know a little bit about what's going on and are happy to talk about this kind of stuff, which I think is kind of the fun of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Go talk to your friends about furry porn, I think is what you should get out of this.
You should make all of your Hinge pickup lines what the other person's favorite furry porn content is. It'll work really well for you, and you'll get lots of matches.
Oh whoa, what's this?
But that is it for this episode. Please click the like and subscribe button because they make us both very happy. Neko does a little dance every single time. And we'll hopefully see you in the next episode where we'll have some more cool, sexy business content to come and talk about.
Bye bye.